The glass shattered 3 tables away. Emmett didn't flinch. He kept his eyes on the water pitcher in his hand, kept pouring into the crystal tumbler, like nothing had happened. Around him, the restaurant held its breath. White linen, gold silverware, chandeliers that cost more than his entire year's rent. Someone laughed. The kind of laugh that said accidents were entertaining when they happened to people who couldn't afford to make them. His back ached. It had been aching for 4 hours straight, the weight of his belly pulling at his spine in ways that made standing feel like a punishment. The uniform apron stretched tight across him. 8 months now, visible no matter how he tried to hide it. Every step sent a dull throb up his vertebrae. Every breath felt like his lungs had forgotten how to expand fully. He finished pouring, set the pitcher down, moved to the next table without looking back. The manager's voice crackled in his earpiece. Table 12 needs immediate attention. VIP section. Emmett's stomach tightened. VIP meant alphas. VIP meant men who expected you to disappear the moment they stopped needing you. VIP meant danger wrapped in $1,000 suits and cologne that cost more than his rent. He crossed the marble floor, each footstep echoing despite the murmur of conversation around him. The restaurant was designed for this, space that made you feel small, silence that made every sound matter. Alphas sat with their backs to walls, facing outward. Omegas moved along the edges, never through the center. Table 12 sat in the corner. 5 men. Suits that probably cost what Emmett made in 8 months. One of them had his phone out, recording something. Another was mid-sentence, gesturing with a wine glass. The man at the head of the table wasn't doing anything. That's what made Emmett notice him first. He sat perfectly still. Didn't check his phone. Didn't adjust his collar. Didn't scan the room. Just existed in a way that made the air around him feel heavier, like the oxygen itself had to ask permission before entering his lungs. Dorian Vex. Emmett had heard the name whispered in the kitchen. Heard it from other servers who'd worked the VIP section longer. No one explained what Dorian did. They just said his name like it was enough. Like it was a warning and a confession all at once. The man scent hit Emmett before he reached the table. Cedar and smoke and something darker. Something that made Emmett's hindbrain sit up and pay attention in ways that were frankly inconvenient. Alpha. Unmated. Dangerous. Emmett had spent 23 years learning to ignore sense. 23 years of telling his biology to shut up and let him survive. But this one slid under his defenses like smoke through a cracked window, and he hated how his pulse quickened in response. He approached the table, keeping his breathing steady despite the pressure building behind his ribs. His pup shifted, just a small movement, a reminder that he wasn't alone in this. He pressed one hand briefly to his side, then reached for his notepad. Good evening. Can I start you with? Dorian slid a document across the table. Not toward himself. Toward Emmett. The paper was thick, expensive, covered in symbols Emmett didn't recognize at first glance. Not English, not Spanish, something older, denser. The kind of thing you'd see in a museum, not a restaurant. Translate this, Dorian said. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't sharp, just flat, like he was asking for salt. Emmett blinked. Sir, I'm here to take your... I'll give you $20 million if you can. The table erupted. Laughter, loud and sharp, the kind that cut through the quiet hum of the restaurant. One of the associates slapped the table, rattling the silverware. Another leaned back in his chair, shaking his head like he just heard the funniest joke of the year. Dorian didn't laugh. He lifted his phone, scrolled through something, unbothered. 20 million, one of the men repeated, grinning. Hell, I'll throw in another 10 if he can even read it. Emmett's pulse hammered in his throat. Heat crawled up his neck, but he kept his face neutral. He'd learned how to do that, how to stand in a room full of men who thought you were a punchline and not let them see you break. He looked down at the document. The symbols shifted in his vision, familiar shapes buried under unfamiliar arrangements. His mother's voice echoed in his head, soft and careful, teaching him letters that weren't supposed to be taught. Languages meant to protect omegas, she'd said. Languages that let you hear what alphas don't want you to understand. Dorian glanced up. His eyes flicked to Emmett's belly, then back to his face. Or, he said, his voice dropping just slightly, "Is it too much thinking for someone in your condition?" The laughter got louder. Emmett's hands didn't shake. He picked up the document, studied it in silence, tuned out the noise around him, tuned out the ache in his feet and the tightness in his chest, and the way his pup kicked once, twice, like even they could feel the tension. The room kept laughing, until Emmett set the paper back down. "You're missing 2 clauses," he said quietly. The laughter stopped. Dorian's thumb paused mid-scroll on his phone screen. He looked up, really looked this time. Not at Emmett's belly, not at the apron or the cheap shoes or the way his uniform pulled wrong across his pregnant frame. At his face. "What about the document?" he asked, his voice flat. But there was something underneath it now. Something that made the other alphas at the table go still. Emmett kept his voice level. "You're missing 2 clauses in the 3rd section. And the opening paragraph contradicts the terms at the bottom. If you sign this, you don't own what you think you do." Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. One of the associates leaned forward, squinting at the paper like it had just transformed into something else. Another shifted in his seat, no longer smiling. The man with the phone lowered it slowly. Dorian set his phone down, folded his hands on the table. His gaze didn't leave Emmett's face. "Explain," he said. Not a request, a command. Emmett swallowed. His mouth was dry, but his mind was clear. He could see it now, the trap buried in the language, the way the sentences looped back on themselves, creating exits where there shouldn't be any. "Sir, I'm just here to explain." The word landed like a weight. Emmett hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he suddenly understood what this was. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't some alpha's idea of entertainment. This was a test he'd stumbled into, and the wrong answer could cost him everything. But staying silent might cost him more. He inhaled slowly. The language is Kalen script. It's designed to look straightforward, but it has embedded reversals. Every 3rd sentence negates the one before it, unless you read the declension markers. He pointed. This phrase, it looks like it's granting ownership rights. But the marker here flips the subject. You're not the owner. You're the lessor. The lease party. The silence stretched. Dorian leaned back in his chair. His expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. The associates weren't laughing anymore. They were staring at the document, at Dorian, at Emmett. One of them cleared his throat. "Boss, is he?" Dorian kept his eyes on Emmett. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Then he said one word. "Continue." Emmett's heart slammed against his ribs. His pup kicked again, harder this time, like a warning. His feet throbbed, his back ached, but his mind stayed sharp. He picked up the document again, and he kept talking. "What do you think Emmett just walked into?" the voiceover would have asked, but there was no voiceover here. Just the weight of 5 alphas staring at him like he'd grown a second head. Dorian didn't touch the document while Emmett explained. He just watched. His fingers rested on the edge of the table, perfectly still. No fidgeting, no impatience. Just that same unnerving calm, like he had all the time in the world and knew it. The associates weren't calm. One of them kept glancing between Emmett and the paper, his jaw tight. Another had pulled out his own phone, typing something fast. The man on Dorian's left leaned closer, squinting at the script like he was trying to decode it himself. Emmett kept his voice steady. "This section here, it looks like standard transfer language. But the verb tense shifts halfway through. In Kalen's script, that's not a grammar mistake. It's intentional. It means the transfer isn't complete until a 3rd party validates it. Without that validation, the whole agreement is void." "Who's the 3rd party?" Dorian asked. "It doesn't say. That's the problem. Dorian's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, just the barest shift, like he'd heard something amusing. One of the associates spoke up. "Boss, we've edited this contract for weeks." Legal said it was clean. "Legal doesn't read Kalen," Emmett said before he could stop himself. The man's eyes snapped to him, sharp and cold. "Excuse me?" Emmett's throat tightened, but he didn't back down. "Most legal experts don't. It's not a commercial language. It's archival. Used in old Omega guilds before." He stopped, forced himself to stay on track. "If someone handed you this contract, they knew you wouldn't understand it." The associate's face darkened. "You calling us stupid? I'm saying you were set up." The air in the room shifted. Tension coiled around the table like a spring wound too tight. Emmett felt it in his chest, pressing down. His pup shifted again, restless. He resisted the urge to touch his belly, to give any sign that he was rattled. Dorian lifted one hand, just a slight movement, but it was enough. The associate went quiet immediately. "Keep going," Dorian said to Emmett. Emmett exhaled slowly. He turned the document over, scanning the next section. His hands were steadier now, his mind sharper. He knew this language, knew how it twisted and turned, how it hid meaning in plain sight. "Here," he said, pointing to a dense paragraph near the bottom. "This clause looks like a liability waiver, but the phrasing is wrong. It doesn't waive liability, it transfers it to you. If anything goes wrong with this deal, you're the one who takes the fall." "How wrong are we talking?" one of the associates asked, his voice strained. "Prison wrong," Emmett said simply. The table went silent again. Dorian leaned forward. Not much, just enough that Emmett could smell him again. Cedar and smoke and that darker undertone that made Emmett's instincts scream danger and safety at the same time. Alpha scent. Unmistakable. "You're sure?" Dorian said. "I'm sure." "And you learned this where?" Emmett hesitated. "My mother taught me." "Why?" "Because she said knowledge protects Omegas when nothing else will." Dorian's gaze didn't waver. Emmett felt it like a physical weight pressing into him. His pulse kicked up, but he didn't look away. Couldn't. Something about this alpha made it impossible to break eye contact, like his body had decided on its own that looking away would be a mistake. Finally, Dorian sat back. He picked up his phone again, typed something short, set it down. "You just saved me $50 million, he said. "Maybe more." Emmett didn't know what to say to that. One of the associates laughed, nervous, disbelieving. "Boss, you're not seriously." "I'm serious." Dorian's voice was flat, final. He glanced at the document, then back at Emmett. "What's your name?" "Emmett." "Emmett Fenwick. You always work here?" 3 months. "And before that?" Emmett's jaw tightened. He didn't want to answer that, didn't want to explain the jobs he'd cycled through, the ones he'd lost because pregnancy made him a liability. Didn't want to talk about the eviction notice taped to his door or the clinic bill he couldn't pay. "Different places," he said carefully. Dorian studied him. Not like the others had, not like he was looking at a mistake or a joke. Like he was calculating something. "You have any formal training?" he asked. "No." "Who else knows you can read Kalen?" "No one." Dorian's eyes narrowed slightly. "No one? It's not exactly a skill people ask for." One of the associates snorted. "Yeah, no kidding." Dorian ignored him. He folded the document carefully, slid it into his jacket pocket. Then he gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Sit." Emmett blinked. "Sir, I can't." "Sit." It wasn't a suggestion. Emmett glanced around the restaurant. A few tables were watching now, curious eyes, whispered conversation. He could feel the weight of their attention, the judgment simmering beneath polite disinterest. He sat. The chair was too soft, too close. He could feel the heat radiating off Dorian, could smell that scent again, stronger now, closer. His instincts pulled in 2 directions at once. Run and stay, run and stay. Dorian signaled the server. Water. No ice. The server nodded and disappeared. Dorian turned back to Emmett. You're pregnant. It wasn't a question, but Emmett answered anyway. 8 months. Alone. Emmett's hands curled into fists under the table. That's not your business. It is if I'm about to offer you a job. Emmett's breath caught. What? You just saved me from a career-ending mistake. I don't forget things like that. Dorian leaned closer, his voice dropping. But I also don't work with people I don't understand. So I'll ask again, are you alone? Emmett swallowed. His throat felt tight. Yes. Family dead. Support? None. Dorian nodded slowly, like Emmett had just confirmed something he'd already suspected. That makes this easier. Makes what easier? The server returned with the water, set it in front of Emmett. Dorian waited until the server left before answering. I want to make you an offer, he said. You can say no. But if you say yes, things are going to change for you. Fast. Emmett stared at him. I don't understand. You don't have to. Not yet. Dorian pulled out a card. Plain black. No name. Just a number embossed in silver. He set it on the table between them. Think about it. Call that number when you decide. Decide what? Dorian stood. The associates scrambled to follow. He buttoned his jacket, adjusted his cuffs, didn't look at Emmett again. But as he walked past, he paused just for a second, long enough to say, You're more valuable than you think, Emmett Fenwick. Then he was gone. Emmett sat frozen, staring at the card on the table. Around him, the restaurant returned to normal. Conversations picked up. Silverware clanked. The chandeliers glittered overhead. He picked up the card. It was warm. He could still smell Dorian's scent clinging to it, cedar and smoke and that dark undertone that made his hindbrain want to submit. He shoved the card into his apron pocket and tried to remember how to breathe. Emmett's shift ended at midnight. He didn't call the number. He folded the card deeper into his apron pocket, finished clearing tables, clocked out, and walked 6 blocks to the bus stop in silence. His feet screamed with every step. His back ached so badly he had to stop twice just to breathe. By the time he got home, it was nearly 1 in the morning. The eviction notice was still taped to his door. He tore it down, crumpled it, threw it in the trash can beside the stairs. It didn't matter. He'd already seen it. Already knew he had 2 weeks left before the landlord stopped pretending to care. Inside, the apartment was cold. Heat cost extra, and Emmett had stopped paying for extra 3 months ago. He dropped his bag by the door, peeled off his shoes. His feet were swollen, purple at the edges. He sat on the edge of his mattress. No frame, just the mattress on the floor, and pressed his hands to his belly. The pup kicked once, twice. I know, Emmett whispered. I'm tired, too. He lay back, stared at the ceiling. His mind kept circling back to the restaurant, to Dorian's voice, to that card burning a hole in his pocket. You're more valuable than you think. Emmett closed his eyes. He didn't believe that. The next morning, Emmett's phone buzzed. He ignored it, rolled over, tried to fall back asleep. It buzzed again, and again. He groaned, reached for it. The screen was cracked, had been for months, but he could still read the notification. Unknown number, you didn't call. Emmett's stomach dropped. He stared at the message, typed a response, deleted it, typed again. Emmett, how did you get my number? The reply came immediately. Unknown. I know a lot of things, Emmett Fenwick. Unknown, including the fact that you're about to lose your apartment. Emmett's chest tightened. He sat up, pulse hammering. Emmett, leave me alone. Unknown. I'm offering you a way out. Emmett, I don't need your help. Unknown. Yes, you do. Emmett threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall, bounced, landed screen down on the floor. He sat there shaking, his pup kicking again, harder this time. He pressed both hands to his belly, breathed slowly, tried to calm down. But his mind wouldn't stop racing. How did Dorian get his number? How did he know about the eviction? What else did he know? Emmett grabbed his phone. The screen was more cracked now, but it still worked. He stared at the messages, then typed, "Emmett, what do you want?" The response took longer this time, long enough that Emmett almost put the phone down. Then it buzzed. "Unknown, meet me tonight. I'll send the address." "Unknown, come alone." Emmett shouldn't have gone. He knew that. Knew it was stupid, reckless, dangerous. Knew that meeting a strange alpha in the middle of the night was the kind of decision that got Omegas killed. But he went anyway. The address led him to a building downtown, sleek glass exterior, security at the front desk, the kind of place Emmett would never belong. He gave his name. The guard checked a list, nodded, gestured to the elevator. Penthouse. Emmett's hands were shaking when he stepped inside. The elevator was all mirrors. He caught his reflection. Swollen belly, cheap jacket, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He looked away. The doors opened. Dorian was waiting. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. Didn't turn when Emmett stepped out. "You came," Dorian said. "You didn't give me much choice." "There's always a choice." Emmett crossed his arms. "What do you want?" Dorian finally turned. His expression was unreadable. "I want to hire you." "As what?" "A translator." "An asset." Emmett frowned. "I don't understand." "You don't have to." "Not yet." Dorian walked toward him, slow and deliberate, stopped a few feet away. "What you did last night, saving me from that contract, that wasn't luck. That was skill. Rare skill. I just read a document. You read a trap that cost someone a lot of money to build, and you dismantled it in under 10 minutes. Dorian's gaze didn't waver. "People like you are dangerous, Emmett." "To the right people." Emmett's pulse kicked up. "I'm not dangerous. I'm just trying to survive." "Exactly. That's what makes you useful." Dorian pulled out his phone, typed something. "I'm offering you a contract. 1 year. You work for me. I handle your housing, medical care, expenses. Everything." Emmett's breath caught. "Why?" "Because I need someone I can trust. Someone who doesn't owe loyalty to anyone else. You don't even know me." "I know enough." Emmett shook his head. "This doesn't make sense. You don't hire random Omegas off the street. I don't hire random anything." Dorian stepped closer, close enough that Emmett could feel the heat radiating off him again, close enough to smell that scent, cedar and smoke and control. "But you're not random. You're smart. You're desperate. And you don't have any other options." Emmett flinched. "That's not." "It's true." Dorian's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I'm not trying to insult you. I'm trying to help you." "Why?" "Because you helped me." Emmett stared at him, searched his face for some sign of a lie, some hint of cruelty. But Dorian's expression stayed calm. "Steady. What if I say no?" Emmett asked. "Then you go back to your apartment. Wait 2 weeks. Get evicted. Figure out what comes next." Dorian tilted his head slightly. "Or you say yes and your life changes tonight." Emmett's hands trembled. He pressed them to his belly, felt his pop shift beneath his palms. "I need time to think. You have 30 seconds. "That's not 30 seconds, Emmett. Because in 31 seconds I'm walking out that door, and I won't ask again." Emmett's chest felt tight. His mind screamed at him to run, to say no, to get out before this turned into something he couldn't control. But his body was tired. His pup was running out of time. And he was so scared of what happened next if he said no. 20 seconds, Dorian said quietly. Emmett closed his eyes. 10. He thought about his mother. About the languages she taught him. About the way she used to say, knowledge protects Omegas when nothing else will. 5. He opened his eyes. "Yes," he said. "I'll do it." Dorian smiled. Not cruel. Not triumphant. just satisfied. Good, he said. And everything changed. The contract was 40 pages long. Emmett sat in a leather chair that cost more than his rent, staring at dense legal text that blurred together after the first 10 pages. His back ached. His feet throbbed. His pup hadn't stopped moving since he'd arrived, restless and anxious. Dorian sat across from him, perfectly still, waiting. This is insane, Emmett muttered. It's thorough. It's a trap. Dorian's mouth twitched. Read it carefully. Tell me where. Emmett flipped to the next page, then the next. His mother's voice echoed in his head. Always read what they don't want you to see. He scanned clauses, subclauses, amendments. Most of it was standard employment terms, confidentiality agreements, compensation structure. Then he found it. Here, Emmett said, tapping the page. Section 12. Termination clause. Dorian leaned forward slightly. What about it? It says either party can terminate with 30 days' notice. But there's a penalty clause buried 3 paragraphs down. If I terminate, I owe you back everything you spent on me. Housing, medical, all of it. That's standard. No, it's not. Emmett flipped back 2 pages. Because Section 8 says you cover all expenses unconditionally. Which means if I leave, I'm not just walking away. I'm walking away in debt. Dorian said nothing. Emmett kept reading. In Section 15, the non-compete, it says I can't work for any of your competitors for 5 years after termination. But you haven't defined who your competitors are, which means you could decide that anyone I work for is a competitor. Clever, Dorian said. It's manipulation. It's protection. For both of us. Dorian stood, crossed to the window. You think I'm the only one at risk here? I'm about to give you access to information that could destroy me. I need insurance. So you trap me. I protect myself. But I also protect you. Section 22. Read it. Emmett flipped ahead. His eyes scanned the text, then stopped. Medical coverage, he read aloud. Full term, including delivery. Postnatal care. Pediatric coverage for the first 3 years. Keep going. Educational trust established at birth. Minimum $50,000. Emmett's voice cracked. Minimum. I don't do things halfway. Dorian walked back to his desk. You want me to remove the termination penalty? Fine. But the non-compete stays. And you stay for the full year. Emmett stared at him. Why are you doing this? I told you. You're valuable. No. Emmett set the contract down. That's not it. You don't hire people like me. You don't care about pregnant omegas who can barely afford bus fare. So what is this really about? Dorian was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat down, folded his hands on the desk. 3 months ago, he said, someone tried to kill me. Emmett went still. Not with a gun. Not with a bomb. With paperwork. Dorian's voice was flat, detached. They buried it in contracts. Shell companies. Legal loopholes. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd already signed half my assets away. It took 6 lawyers 3 weeks to untangle it. And you think I can help with that? I know you can. Because you did it in 10 minutes. Dorian leaned forward. I need someone who sees what others miss. Someone who doesn't have allegiances or debts or favors owed. Someone clean. I'm not clean. I'm desperate. Exactly. Which means you'll do the job right because you can't afford not to. Emmett's hands curled into fists. You're using me. I'm hiring you. There's a difference. Is there? Dorian's gaze didn't waver. Yes, because I'm not pretending this is charity. I'm not offering you a handout. I'm offering you a trade. Your skill for my resources. You get what you need. I get what I need. Everyone wins. Emmett wanted to argue. Wanted to walk out. But his mind kept circling back to the medical coverage, the trust fund, the housing. What happens if I fail? He asked quietly. You won't. But if I do, then we renegotiate. Emmett stared at the contract. 40 pages of legal text that could save him or bury him. The pup kicked again, harder this time, like they were casting a vote. I need to change one thing, Emmett said. What? The termination penalty. I'll accept it, but only if it's capped. 5 years of expenses. Not unlimited. Dorian considered, then nodded. Done. He pulled out a pen, made the change by hand, initialed it, slid the contract back to Emmett. Anything else? Emmett read it again, cover to cover. Checked every clause, every subclause, every footnote. His mother had taught him to be thorough, to never sign something he didn't understand. When he was done, he looked up. One more thing, he said. Section 31. Confidentiality. It says I can't disclose anything about this arrangement ever, even after the contract ends. Correct. Yes. What if you hurt me? Dorian's expression shifted, just barely. What if you hurt me? If you abuse me? If you do something that puts me or my pup at risk? The confidentiality clause means I can't tell anyone. Can't report you. Can't defend myself. Dorian stared at him. For the first time since they'd met, he looked genuinely caught off guard. You think I'd hurt you, he said slowly. I don't know. That's the problem. Dorian stood, walked around a desk, stopped in front of Emmett's chair. He crouched down, low enough that they were eye level. I don't hurt people who work for me, he said quietly. I don't abuse. I don't manipulate. I don't cross lines that shouldn't be crossed. His gaze was steady. But I understand why you'd assume the worst. So I'll add an exception. If I ever harm you or your pup, physically, emotionally, financially, the confidentiality clause is void. You can walk away. Keep everything. No penalty. Emmett's breath caught. You'd put that in writing. I just did. Dorian stood, made the change, initialed it, handed the contract back. Emmett read the new clause. Then read it again. It was real. Why? He whispered. Because trust goes both ways. Emmett looked up at him, searched his face for deception. Found none. He picked up the pen and signed. The apartment Dorian gave him had windows. Real ones, not the narrow slits Emmett was used to. These were floor-to-ceiling glass panels that let in so much light he had to squint the first time he walked in. There was a bed with a frame and sheets that didn't smell like mildew. A kitchen with a stove that worked. A bathroom with hot water that didn't cut out after 2 minutes. A refrigerator stocked with food he didn't have to budget for. Emmett stood in the middle of the living room and cried. He didn't mean to. He'd been holding it together through the contract signing, through the car ride over, through the quiet tour Dorian had given him. But standing there, staring at a space that was clean and safe in his, something inside him broke. His pup kicked, like they understood. Dorian stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching. You okay? He asked. Emmett wiped his face quickly. Yeah, sorry. I just... Don't apologize. Emmett nodded, swallowed hard. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't started working. When do I start? Tomorrow. 9 a.m. A car will pick you up. Where are we going? You'll see. Dorian turned to leave, then paused. There's a clinic 3 blocks from here. Prenatal care. I've already set up your first appointment. Thursday at 2. Emmett blinked. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. That was the deal. Dorian glanced back. Get some rest. You look like you need it. He left before Emmett could respond. The door clicked shut. Emmett stood there, alone in an apartment that felt too big and too quiet. He walked to the window, pressed his hand against the glass, stared out at the city below. Lights stretching endlessly. Lives intersecting and splitting apart. His pup kicked again. We're going to be okay, Emmett whispered. He wanted to believe it. The car arrived at 8:45. Emmett was ready. He'd spent the night unpacking the few things he owned, showering in water that stayed hot, eating food that didn't make his stomach turn. He'd slept in a real bed for the first time in months. He felt almost human again. The driver didn't speak. Just opened the door, waited for Emmett to climb in, then drove in silence. They headed downtown, pulled into an underground garage, stopped in front of a private elevator. "Mr. Vex is expecting you," the driver said. "Penthouse." Emmett nodded, got out. The elevator doors opened the moment he approached. When he stepped out, Dorian was waiting, but he wasn't alone. 3 people stood around a conference table. 2 men, 1 woman. All of them looked up when Emmett entered. Their expressions were careful, neutral. "This is Emmett," Dorian said. "He's joining us." No one moved. Dorian gestured to the table. "Sit." Emmett sat. Dorian pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "New contract came in this morning. I need you to read it." Emmett opened the folder. The contract inside was dense, 30 pages, single-spaced. He scanned the first page, then the second. His pulse kicked up. "This is a merger agreement," he said. "Correct." "With Davenport Industries." "Also correct." Emmett looked up. "They tried to buy you out 3 years ago." Dorian's expression didn't change. "You've done your homework. I looked you up last night, and this doesn't make sense. You turned them down then. Why would you agree now?" "That's what I need you to figure out." Emmett frowned. He went back to the contract, read carefully. The terms looked standard at first glance: asset transfer, valuation, equity distribution. But something fell off. He flipped to the appendix, found the asset list, and froze. "This includes your primary holdings," Emmett said slowly. "Your real estate portfolio. Your overseas investments. Everything." "Yes. That's not a merger. That's a buyout." One of the men at the table shifted. "We've reviewed it. The terms are favorable." Emmett didn't look at him. Kept his eyes on the contract. Favorable for who? For everyone. No. Emmett tapped the clause halfway down page 18. This section, it transfers operational control to Davenport's board immediately upon signing. You'd have voting shares, but no decision-making power. You'd be a figurehead. The room went quiet. Dorian leaned back in his chair. "Keep going." Emmett flipped ahead, found another clause, then another. And here, this liquidation clause. It says if the company underperforms for 2 consecutive quarters, Davenport can force a sale at a valuation they determine. "That's standard," the woman said. "No, it's not." Emmett's voice was sharper now. "Standard clauses tie valuation to market rates. This one doesn't. Which means they can lowball you, buy you out for pennies, and you can't stop them." One of the men stood. "This is insulting. We've spent weeks negotiating this deal. Then you miss something. Enough." Dorian's voice cut through the tension. He looked at the 3 people around the table. "He's right." The woman stared. "Sir, with all due respect." "He's right," Dorian repeated. "And you didn't catch it. Any of you." The silence was suffocating. Dorian turned to Emmett. "What's your recommendation?" Emmett's hands were shaking, but he kept his voice steady. "Don't sign. Renegotiate the control clause and the liquidation terms. If they won't budge, walk away. And if they threaten to pull the offer entirely, let them. This deal doesn't benefit you. It benefits them." Dorian studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Thank you," he said simply. He stood, gestured to the others. "Meeting's over. Rework the contract. I want new terms by Friday." They filed out, silent and tense. When the door closed, Dorian turned back to Emmett. "You just saved me $300 million, he said. Emmett exhaled shakily. I just did my job. Most people don't. Not like that. Dorian walked to the window, stared out at the city. You were right about me, you know. I don't hire people like you. Then why did you hire me? Dorian glanced back. Because people like you see things people like me miss. Emmett wanted to respond, wanted to ask what that meant. But before he could, Dorian's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned. Something wrong? Emmett asked. No. Dorian pocketed the phone. Just a reminder. Of what? Dorian looked at him. For the first time, there was something almost soft in his expression. That some investments take time, he said quietly. He walked past Emmett without another word, leaving Emmett alone in the conference room, staring at a contract that had almost destroyed everything. The message came at 2 o'clock in the morning. Emmett woke to his phone, buzzing on the nightstand. He grabbed it, squinting at the brightness. Unknown number, don't go to work tomorrow. His heart slammed against his ribs. He sat up, typed fast. Emmett, who is this? No response. Emmett, how did you get this number? Still nothing. Emmett stared at the screen, pulse racing. He scrolled up through his messages, looking for something, anything that would tell him who was watching him. But there was nothing. Just that one message, glowing in the dark. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. By 8 a.m., Emmett was dressed and waiting by the door. The car arrived on time. Same driver. Same silence. When they pulled into the garage, Emmett's phone buzzed again. Unknown, I warned you. His hands shook. He shoved the phone in his pocket, got out of the car. The elevator ride felt longer this time. Each floor that passed made his chest tighter. When the doors opened, the penthouse was empty. No Dorian. No conference table set up. Just silence. Emmett stepped out slowly. Hello. Nothing. He walked further in, checked the conference room, the office. All empty. Then he heard it. Voices low and tense, coming from somewhere deeper in the building. Emmett followed the sound, down a hallway he hadn't noticed before, past closed doors with frosted glass. The voices got louder. He stopped outside a door that was cracked open. Telling you, it's a problem, someone said. Male voice. Unfamiliar. I'm handling it. Dorian's voice. Calm but cold. You're not handling anything. You brought in some pregnant Omega off the street, and now he's... Careful. The word landed like a blade. Silence. Then the other voice, quieter now. I'm just saying. People are noticing. Asking questions. Let them ask. It makes you look weak. It makes me look strategic. It makes you look distracted. Emmett pressed closer to the door. His pup kicked once sharp. He saved us $300 million, Dorian said. What have you saved me lately? No response. That's what I thought. Footsteps. Emmett stumbled back from the door, turned, tried to walk away before. The door swung open. Dorian stood there. His eyes locked on Emmett immediately. How long have you been standing there? He asked. I just got here. Emmett lied. Dorian didn't believe him. Emmett could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his gaze sharpened. But he didn't call it out. Come with me, Dorian said. He didn't wait for an answer, just turned and walked. Emmett followed. They went back to the conference room. Dorian closed the door, locked it. Sit, he said. Emmett sat. Dorian stayed standing, crossed his arms. You got a message last night. Emmett's stomach dropped. How did you? I monitor threats. Anyone who contacts you goes through my security first. You're tracking my phone. I'm protecting you. That's not the same thing. Dorian stepped closer. Someone told you not to come in today. That means someone knows you're working for me, and they want you gone. Who? I don't know yet, but I will. Dorian pulled out his own phone, typed something. Until I figure it out, you don't leave this building without security. You don't answer unknown numbers. You don't go anywhere alone. You can't just lock me up. I'm not locking you up. I'm keeping you alive. The words hung in the air. Emmett stared at him. You think someone's going to hurt me? I think someone's already trying. Emmett's hands curled into fists on the table. This is insane. I've been working for you for 3 days. Why would anyone care? Because you're good at what you do. And that makes you dangerous. Dorian's voice dropped. You dismantled the contract my entire legal team missed. You saw through a merger deal that would have bankrupted me. People notice things like that. So what? I just hide. You stay smart. Emmett stood. His pup kicked again, harder now. I didn't sign up for this. Yes, you did. You just didn't realize it yet. Emmett wanted to argue. Wanted to walk out. But his mind kept circling back to that message, to the voice in the hallway, to the way Dorian's expression had shifted when he saw Emmett listening. What aren't you telling me? Emmett asked. Dorian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, more than you're ready to hear. That afternoon, Emmett's work schedule disappeared. Not canceled, just gone. He logged into the system Dorian's assistant had set up for him. His calendar was blank. No meetings. No contract reviews. Nothing. He called the assistant. Got voicemail. Called Dorian. Same thing. By 6 p.m., Emmett was pacing his apartment, phone in hand, trying not to panic. At 7 o'clock, someone knocked on his door. Emmett froze. The knock came again, harder. He walked to the door slowly, checked the peephole. A woman stood there. Professional suit. Briefcase. Expression neutral. Mr. Fenwick? She called through the door. Who are you? I'm here on behalf of Mr. Vex. Emmett opened the door a crack. He sent you. Not exactly. She held up a business card. I'm his lawyer. Janine Rollins. We need to talk. Emmett's chest tightened. About what? She pushed the door open before he could respond, stepped inside, closed the door behind her. You've been reassigned, Janine said, setting her briefcase on the counter. Effective immediately. Reassigned where? Away from the main office. Away from contract work. Away from anything that puts you in the public eye. Why? Janine opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder, set it on the counter. Because someone filed a complaint. Emmett's blood ran cold. What kind of complaint? Workplace harassment. Alleging that Mr. Vex coerced you into accepting employment under duress. That you're being exploited due to your condition. That's not true. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters that it's filed. Janine's voice was sharp, clinical. And if this goes to court, it becomes public. Which means everyone knows about you. About your connection to Mr. Vex. About everything. Emmett sank into a chair. Who filed it? Anonymous tip. Routed through 3 different law firms. Untraceable. So what happens now? Janine closed the folder. Now you disappear. The new apartment was smaller. No floor-to-ceiling windows. No view of the city. Just 4 walls, a bed, and a door that locked from the outside. Emmett stood in the middle of the room, staring at nothing. This is temporary, Janine had said when she dropped him off. Until the complaint gets resolved. How long will that take? Weeks. Maybe months. I can't just sit here for months. You don't have a choice. She'd left him there alone. With a phone that didn't ring. And a schedule that didn't exist. Emmett pressed his hands to his belly. His pup kicked weakly, like even they could feel the walls closing in. He sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out his phone, scrolled through his messages. Nothing from Dorian. Nothing from anyone. He typed a message. Where are you? Sent it. Waited. No response. Hours passed. Emmett tried calling, straight to voicemail. He tried the assistant, same thing. By midnight, he was convinced he'd been abandoned. Then his phone buzzed. Not a text, a notification. Bank transfer received, $15,000. Emmett stared at the screen. Another notification. Medical appointment confirmed. Thursday, 2 p.m. Then another. Account established. Educational trust fund. He opened his banking app. The transfers were real. $15,000, just sitting there. A note appeared at the bottom of the screen. You're not forgotten. No signature. No explanation. Just that. Emmett's hand shook. He didn't know if he should feel relieved or terrified. 3 days later, the restaurant changed ownership. Emmett didn't find out until he saw it on the news, a brief segment, 30 seconds. The anchor mentioned a quiet acquisition, one of the city's oldest fine dining establishments sold to an undisclosed buyer. Emmett recognized the name immediately. It was the restaurant where he'd worked, where he'd met Dorian, where everything started. He grabbed his phone, searched for details, found a press release buried on page 3 of search results. New ownership to implement comprehensive staff reforms. All employees to receive updated contracts, benefits packages, and workplace protections. Emmett read it twice, then 3 times. He checked the date. The sale had gone through 2 days ago. The same day, Janine had moved him to this apartment. The same day, his work had disappeared. The same day, someone filed that complaint. Emmett's mind raced. He pulled up his messages, scrolled back through the conversation with Dorian. Stopped on one line. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it listens. He'd said that. Back at the penthouse, after Emmett had questioned the merger deal. Emmett stood, paced the small room. His pup kicked, restless. He's protecting us, Emmett whispered. Not by shouting. Not by confronting. By rearranging everything behind the scenes. Another notification buzzed. Payroll correction, back pay issued. Emmett opened it. Saw deposits going back months, money he'd been owed, money the restaurant had accidentally withheld. All of it corrected. Paid in full. He sat down slowly, stared at his phone, and realized something terrifying. Dorian wasn't just protecting him. He was erasing every vulnerability Emmett had. Every debt. Every threat. Every weak point. One by one. In complete silence. The memo leaked on a Friday. Emmett saw it first on a financial news site, buried in a sidebar. Easy to miss if you weren't looking. Vex Holdings backs out of Davenport merger. Insider claims last-minute discovery saved billions. He clicked the link. The article was short, vague. It mentioned undisclosed legal issues and translation errors that had gone unnoticed during initial review. It didn't mention Emmett by name, but it didn't have to. He knew. His phone buzzed. Unknown, you made the news. Emmett's chest tightened. Emmett, who is this? Unknown, someone who's been watching. Unknown, congratulations. You just became the most dangerous Omega in the city. Emmett threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall, didn't break, just clattered to the floor. He sat there shaking, hands pressed to his belly. His pup kicked once, twice, like they were trying to tell him something. I know, Emmett whispered. I know. That night, Janine showed up again. No knock this time. She used a key, walked in like she owned the place. Pack your things, she said. Emmett stood. Why? Because you're moving again. Where? Somewhere safer. I thought this place was safe. Janine's expression was tight. It was. Until someone posted your address online. Emmett's blood ran cold. What? Anonymous forum. Posted 2 hours ago. Your name, your address, a photo of this building. She crossed her arms. We're moving you now. Who's doing this? We don't know. But they're escalating. Emmett grabbed his bag, started shoving clothes inside. Where's Dorian? Hailing it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They left through a back exit, got into a car Emmett didn't recognize, drove for 40 minutes in silence. The new place was a house, suburban, quiet, the kind of neighborhood where people didn't ask questions. Janine walked him inside, handed him a new phone. "Your old number's been disconnected," she said. "This one's clean. Only Mr. Vex and I have it. What about my job?" "On hold." "For how long?" "Until this is resolved." Emmett wanted to scream, wanted to demand answers. But Janine was already walking back to the car. "Wait," Emmett called. "Is he okay?" Janine paused, turned. "He's doing what he does best," she said, taking care of problems quietly. Then she was gone. 2 weeks passed. No messages. No calls. No updates. Emmett spent his days in the house, staring at walls, trying not to lose his mind. His pup was getting bigger, stronger. Every kick felt like a countdown. He had his clinic appointment on Thursday. A driver picked him up, didn't speak, just drove. The clinic was nice, clean, private. The doctor was kind, professional. "Everything looks good," she said after the exam. "You're at 32 weeks now. Almost there." "How much longer?" 6 to 8 weeks. "Maybe less." She smiled. "You excited?" Emmett didn't know how to answer that. When he got back to the house, there was a package on the doorstep. No label. No return address. He brought it inside, opened it carefully. Inside was a single envelope. He opened it. Document. Legal. Official. Trust Fund Establishment Notice. Beneficiary, Baby Fenwick unborn. Initial deposit, $500,000. Donor anonymous. Emmett's hand shook so hard he almost dropped the paper. $500,000. For his pup. From someone who wouldn't even put their name on it. He sank to the floor, pressed his face into his hands and cried. Not from fear this time. From something he couldn't name. The contraction started at 3 a.m. Emmett awoke to pain slicing through his abdomen, sharp, relentless. He gasped, reaching for his phone. Called the emergency number Janine had given him. She answered on the second ring. "Emmett, I'm in labor," Emmett said through gritted teeth. "I'm sending a car. 5 minutes." It took 3. The driver didn't speak, just drove fast, weaving through empty streets. Emmett gripped the door handle, breathing through the pain. The hospital was private, quiet. A nurse met him at the entrance with a wheelchair. "We've been expecting you," she said. They wheeled him to a room, got him settled, hooked up monitors. The contractions were coming faster now, closer together. "Where's my doctor?" Emmett asked. "On her way." Hours blurred together. Pain, breathing, nurses checking vitals. The doctor arriving. Instructions Emmett barely heard. "You're doing great," someone said. He wasn't. He was terrified. Alone. His hand shook every time a contraction hit. "Is there anyone we can call?" the nurse asked. Emmett shook his head. "No family. No partner." "No." She squeezed his hand. "You're not alone. We're right here." But he was. He'd never felt more alone in his life. The baby was born at 9:47 a.m. A boy. Small but healthy. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. The nurse wrapped him in a blanket, placed him in Emmett's arms. Emmett stared down at his son. Tiny fingers curled into fists. A face so perfect it hurt to look at. "Hey," Emmett whispered. I'm your dad." The baby didn't cry. Just blinked up at him with dark, curious eyes. Emmett's chest felt too full, like his heart was trying to break out of his ribs. "You're safe," he said softly. "I promise. You're safe." The nurse smiled. "He's beautiful." "Yeah," Emmett said. "He is." 3 hours later, Janine showed up. She walked into the room carrying flowers, set them on the table beside the bed. "Congratulations," she said. Emmett looked up from where his son was sleeping against his chest. "Thank you." Janine pulled out a folder. "I have paperwork for you." "No, it's important." Emmett sighed, shifted carefully, so he didn't wake the baby. What is it? The trust fund. It's been activated. Emmett blinked. What does that mean? It means the moment your son was born, the funds became accessible for his care. His education. Whatever he needs. Emmett stared at her. $500,000? More now. Interest accrued during the waiting period. It's closer to 550. Emmett's breath caught. I don't understand. You don't have to. Just know that he's taken care of. Janine set the folder on the bed. There's more. Your housing is secured, paid in full for the next 5 years. Medical coverage extended. Childcare stipend established. Why? Janine's expression softened just slightly. Because Mr. Vex keeps his promises. Where is he? I can't tell you that. Can't or won't. Both. Emmett looked down at his son. At the tiny life he'd brought into the world. The life he was supposed to protect. Will I see him again? Emmett asked quietly. Janine was silent for a long moment. Then she said, I don't know. She left. Emmett sat there, holding his son, staring at nothing. Outside, the city moved on. People lived their lives, made their choices, built their futures. And somewhere out there, Dorian Vex was doing the same. Just not with them. 6 months later, Emmett was changing a diaper when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But something made him pick up. Hello. Silence. Then a voice familiar. Quiet. How is he? Emmett's heart stopped. Dorian. How is he? Dorian repeated. Emmett looked at his son, now 6 months old, babbling softly in his crib, growing stronger every day. He's perfect, Emmett whispered. Good. Silence stretched between them. Emmett's mind raced with 1,000 questions. Where have you been? Why did you leave? Why are you calling now? But what he said was, thank you. For what? Everything. The trust fund. The house. His voice cracked. Everything. You earned it. I didn't. You did. Dorian's voice was soft. You saved me more than once. I just read some contracts. You gave me something I didn't have before. What? Someone I could trust. Emmett's chest tightened. Then why did you disappear? Dorian was quiet for a long moment. Because staying would have put you in danger. I was already in danger. More danger. The kind I couldn't protect you from if I was standing next to you. Emmett closed his eyes. So you left. So I left. And now things are different. How? The people who wanted to hurt you are gone. The threats are handled. You're safe. We're safe, Emmett corrected. Yes, you're both safe. Emmett sank onto the couch. His son gurgled from the crib, happy, unaware. What happens now? Emmett asked. That's up to you. What do you mean? I'm not going to show up and demand a place in your life, Dorian said. I'm not going to pretend I have rights to something I didn't build. But if you want, he paused. If you ever want to talk, or need anything, you have my number now. Emmett looked at his phone, at the unknown number glowing on the screen. Will you call again? He asked. Do you want me to? Emmett's throat felt tight. I don't know. That's fair. Another silence. Then Dorian said, Take care of yourself, Emmett Fenwick. Wait. But the line was already dead. Emmett sat there, staring at his phone, heart pounding. His son laughed from the crib, a bright, clear sound that cut through the confusion. Emmett stood, walked over, picked him up. What do you think? He whispered. Should I call him back? His son grabbed his finger. Squeezed. Emmett smiled, despite himself. Yeah, he said softly. Maybe someday. He looked out the window at the city sprawling beyond. At the life he was building. At the future stretching out in front of them. Somewhere out there, Dorian was doing the same. Building. Protecting. Moving through the world in silence. And maybe, Just maybe their paths would cross again. When the time was right, when they were both ready. Emmett pressed a kiss to his son's forehead. Some bonds aren't claimed loudly, he whispered. Some wait. His phone sat on the table. Silent. For now. The glass hit the floor before Emmett could stop it. His son, Cale, he named him, after the language that had saved them, had knocked the sippy cup off the high chair with one determined swipe. Milk pooled across the kitchen tiles, spreading toward the baseboards. No, baby, Emmett said, grabbing a towel. We don't throw things. Cale laughed. That bright, unbothered giggle that made discipline impossible. Emmett was on his knees, mopping milk, when someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps. Too deliberate to be a delivery. He froze. No one visited. No one knew where they lived except Janine, and she always called first. The knock came again. Emmett stood slowly, moved to the door, checked the peephole. A man stood on the porch, tall, expensive coat, face partially obscured by the angle. Not Dorian. Can I help you? Emmett called through the door. Mr. Fenwick? The man's voice was smooth, professional. I'm here regarding a matter of inheritance. Emmett's stomach tightened. I don't have any inheritance. Your son does. The words landed like a punch. Emmett opened the door a crack. What are you talking about? The man held up a briefcase. May I come in? This conversation requires privacy. No. Mr. Fenwick. I said no. The man's expression didn't change. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a business card, slid it through the gap in the door. When you're ready to discuss your son's future, call me. He turned, walked back to a black sedan parked at the curb, drove away. Emmett stood in the doorway, staring at the card. Damon Ashford. Estate attorney. No firm name. No address. Just a phone number. Cale started crying from the kitchen. Emmett shoved the card in his pocket, went back inside, closed the door. His hands were shaking. He picked up Cale, held him close, felt the warmth of his son's body against his chest. It's okay, he whispered. We're okay. But he didn't believe it. That night, after Cale was asleep, Emmett pulled out the card, stared at it under the kitchen light. He called Janine. She answered on the 3rd ring. It's late. Someone came to my house today. Silence. Emmett. What did they want? Emmett, listen to me. They said something about inheritance. For Cale. Emmett's voice cracked. Janine, what's going on? More silence. Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Emmett paced the kitchen, checked on Cale 3 times, stared out the window at the empty street. Janine arrived in 15. She walked in without knocking, locked the door behind her, set her briefcase on the counter. Show me the card, she said. Emmett handed it over. Janine studied it, her jaw tightening. What is this? Emmett asked. A problem. That's not an answer. Janine set the card down, looked at him directly. Dorian's father died 3 weeks ago. Emmett's breath caught. I didn't know he had a father. No one did. He kept it quiet. For good reason. Janine crossed her arms. The old man was worth $4 billion. And he left everything in a trust. What does that have to do with Cale? The trust has conditions. Specific ones. And one of them involves any heir born within 2 years of the signing. Emmett's pulse hammered. Cale's not Dorian's son. Legally, that doesn't matter. The trust doesn't specify biological heirs. It specifies heirs under Dorian's care, which includes anyone he's financially supporting. Janine's voice was tight. And he's been supporting you and Cale since before the baby was born. Emmett sank into a chair. So what does that mean? It means Cale might be entitled to a portion of the estate. A significant portion. How significant? Potentially hundreds of millions. The room tilted. Emmett gripped the edge of the table. That's insane. That's estate law. Janine opened her briefcase, pulled out documents. But there's a problem. If Cale is named as an heir, his identity becomes public record, which means everyone knows about you, about your connection to Dorian, about everything. Can we refuse it? You can, but that won't stop the lawyers. They'll file motions, demand paternity tests, drag you into court. Why? Because the other heirs want to know if Cale's claim is legitimate, and they won't stop until they have answers. Emmett pressed his hands to his face. This is a nightmare. It's worse than you think. He looked up. How? Janine hesitated. Then she said, Dorian's trying to block the inheritance. What? He filed an injunction, claiming Cale has no legal standing, that the support he provided was employment-based, not familial. Emmett's chest felt tight. He's cutting us off. He's protecting you. If Cale isn't legally tied to the estate, the lawyers can't touch him. Can't touch you. But that means we lose everything. No. It means you keep what you have. The trust fund Dorian set up is separate. Private. No one can access it or challenge it. But the inheritance, Janine shook her head. The inheritance comes with strings. Lawyers. Publicity. Court battles. Dorian's trying to spare you from that. Emmett stood, walked to the window, stared out at the dark street. Did he tell you to say that? He asked quietly. No. Then how do you know? Because I've worked for him long enough to know how he thinks. Emmett turned. Where is he? I can't tell you that. Can't or won't. Both. Emmett's hands curled into fists. I'm so tired of people making decisions for me. He's not making decisions for you. He's making them for Cale. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Janine stepped closer. You have a choice here. You can fight for the inheritance, take it to court, make Cale's claim public, or you can walk away. Let Dorian handle the legal mess. Keep Cale safe. And what happens to Dorian? He loses billions. Maybe more. Emmett stared at her. You're saying he'd give up his inheritance to protect my son? I'm saying he already has. The words hung in the air. Emmett's throat felt tight. I need to talk to him. That's not possible right now. Why not? Because he's in the middle of a legal war. And if he contacts you directly, it undermines everything he's trying to do. Emmett wanted to scream. Wanted to throw something. Wanted to demand answers that no one would give him. But Cale was asleep upstairs, and Emmett had learned a long time ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. What do I do? He asked. Janine handed him a folder. You wait, and you trust that he knows what he's doing. She left. Emmett stood in the kitchen, holding the folder, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. He checked it. Unknown, I'm sorry. That was all. Emmett typed back, for what? The response came immediately. Unknown, for everything I can't say. Emmett stared at the screen. Typed again. Is this worth it? Unknown you are. The phone went dark. Emmett set it down, walked upstairs, checked on Cale. His son was sleeping peacefully, tiny chest rising and falling, completely unaware of the storm building around him. Emmett sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in months, he let himself cry. Not from fear, not from anger, from something deeper. Something that felt like grief and hope tangled together. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere, Dorian was fighting a war. And Emmett was here, holding the life they'd both built, wondering if they'd ever stand in the same room again. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. Emmett sat in the back row, holding Cale on his lap. His son squirmed, reaching for the railing in front of them. Emmett pulled him back gently. Quiet, baby, he whispered. Janine had told him not to come. It's just a preliminary hearing, she'd said. Nothing will happen today. But Emmett had come anyway, because Dorian was here, and Emmett hadn't seen him in over a year. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The bailiff called a case, Estate of Cornelius Vex. Contested inheritance claim. Emmett's heart pounded. Dorian sat at the defendant's table, back straight, hands folded. He didn't turn around, didn't look at the gallery, didn't acknowledge that Emmett was there. The opposing lawyer stood, a woman in her 50s, sharp suit, sharper voice. Your Honor, the plaintiff's position is simple. The trust established by Cornelius Vex specified that any heir financially supported by Dorian Vex during the 2-year window is entitled to a proportional share of the estate. The defendant provided substantial financial support to Emmett Fenwick and his child during that period. Therefore, the child has a legitimate claim. The judge looked at Dorian's lawyer. Counsel. Dorian's lawyer stood, a man in his 60s, calm, measured. Your Honor, the defendant's support of Mr. Fenwick was employment-based. Mr. Fenwick worked as a consultant. The financial arrangements were part of a compensation package, not familial support. The opposing lawyer laughed. A consultant? Your Honor, Emmett Fenwick was a pregnant server at a restaurant. He had no qualifications, no experience. The defendant hired him out of charity, or something else. Emmett's face burned. Cale started fussing. Emmett bounced him gently, trying to stay calm. The judge raised a hand. Let's keep this professional. Of course, Your Honor. The opposing lawyer pulled out a document. But the facts speak for themselves. The defendant provided housing, medical care, and established a trust fund for Mr. Fenwick's child. That goes beyond employment. That's familial support. Dorian's lawyer didn't flinch. The trust fund was established independently. It has no legal connection to the Vex estate. The defendant is entitled to support whomever he chooses. That doesn't make every recipient an heir. The judge leaned back. I'll need to review the documentation. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. The gavel struck. Everyone stood. Dorian's lawyer gathered his files. Dorian stood slowly, buttoned his jacket, and then he turned. His eyes found Emmett immediately. For 3 seconds, they just looked at each other. Dorian's expression was unreadable. No smile, no acknowledgement. Just that same calm, that same control. Then he turned away, walked out of the courtroom. Emmett sat frozen. Cale babbled, oblivious. Janine appeared beside him. You shouldn't have come. I had to. Why? Because he's doing all of this alone. He chose that. Did he? Or did we choose it for him? Janine didn't answer. Emmett stood, adjusted Cale on his hip. I need to talk to him. That's a bad idea. I don't care. He walked out of the courtroom, down the hallway, pushed through the doors into the lobby. Dorian was standing by the elevators. Alone. Emmett's breath caught. He walked toward him. Each step felt heavier than the last. Dorian saw him coming. Didn't move. You shouldn't be here, Dorian said quietly. Neither should you. This is my fight. It's mine, too. Dorian's jaw tightened. No, it's not. You're fighting for my son. That makes it mine. I'm fighting to keep him safe. That's different. Emmett stepped closer. Cale reached out toward Dorian, tiny hand grasping at air. Dorian looked at the baby. Something shifted in his expression, just for a second. How is he? Dorian asked. He's good. Growing. Happy. That's all that matters. Is it? Dorian looked up, met Emmett's eyes. Yes. What about you? I'm fine. You're lying. Dorian's mouth twitched, almost a smile. You always could see through me. Then why do you keep trying to hide? Because it's easier. For who? For everyone. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Dorian stepped inside. Emmett followed. What are you doing? Dorian asked. Coming with you. Emmett, just let me talk. Please. The doors closed. They stood in silence. The elevator descended. Cale babbled. Dorian looked at him again, his expression softening. He looks like you, Dorian said. People say that. It's true. Emmett shifted Kale to his other hip. Why are you doing this? You know why. I want to hear you say it. Dorian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because I owe you. You don't owe me anything. I do. You saved me more than once. This is me returning the favor. By losing billions of dollars, money isn't everything. It is to most people. I'm not most people. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. Dorian stepped out. Emmett followed him across the lobby, out into the street. A car was waiting, black tinted windows. Dorian turned. You need to go home. I need you to stop pushing me away. I'm not. Yes, you are. Emmett's voice cracked. You disappear for a year. You fight legal battles alone. You won't even let me say thank you. You don't need to thank me. Then what do I need to do? Live your life. Raise your son. Be happy. What if I can't do that without knowing you're okay? Dorian stared at him. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Emmett, he said quietly, I don't know how to let people in, then learn. It's not that simple. It is. You just have to try. Dorian looked away. I've spent my entire life building walls. I don't know how to take them down. You don't have to take them all down. Just one. For me. The street noise faded. They stood there, two people who'd orbited each other for so long without ever really connecting. Kale reached out again. This time, he grabbed Dorian's finger. Held on tight. Dorian looked down at the tiny hand wrapped around his. Something in his expression broke, just a little. I don't know if I can be what you need, he said. I'm not asking you to be anything. I'm just asking you to stop running. Dorian was quiet. Then he said, Okay. I'll try. Emmett's chest felt too full, like his heart was trying to expand past his ribs. That's all I wanted to hear, he whispered. Dorian's driver opened the car door. Dorian looked at Emmett one more time. I'll call you. Promise. I promise. He got in the car. The door closed. Emmett stood on the sidewalk, holding Kale, watching the car pull away. His son was still clutching his finger. That's him, baby, Emmett whispered. That's the man who saved us. Kale gurgled happily. Emmett smiled. For the first time in months, he felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. 2 weeks later, the judge ruled in Dorian's favor. Kale had no legal claim to the estate. The trust fund Dorian had established remained untouched, private, protected. Emmett got the call from Janine. It's over, she said. What happens now? Now you move on. Emmett hung up, sat in his kitchen, stared at his phone, waited. At 8 p.m. it rang. Unknown number. He answered. Hello. Dorian's voice steady calm. You won. We won. What now? Now we figure out what comes next. Together. A pause. Then, yeah. Together. Emmett closed his eyes. Felt something settle in his chest. Something that felt like hope. Okay, he whispered. Okay. The line went quiet, but neither of them hung up. They just stayed there, connected. For the first time in a long time. And it felt like a beginning. Then,